So far, we've introduced our horse to round penning and desensitizing. The next exercise is the first in two exercises that we will use to help our horse understand that we want to be able to isolate separate body parts and move them independently. The hindquarter yields exercise teaches our horse to move just their hindquarters in response to our pressure and active body language. Once again, we are using pressure to motivate our horse to take action to find the solution to release the pressure. Remember, each time that we practice these skills, our horse gets better and better at figuring out what response we're looking for. It becomes a game or a dance, and with repetition and proper timing of our release, we get a partner that is willing and responsive and nearly always chooses to respond to pressure instead of reacting explosively. This exercise adds to the foundation that when we apply pressure with active body language, our horse will move in response to it. During this exercise, our first goal is to apply pressure in a way that will push the hindquarters away from us. Remember that horses' major weapons are their hind feet, not just in their ability to kick out, but also because this is where all of their speed and forward movement comes from. If a horse is rearing, bolting, bucking, or charging, all of that power is coming from their hind end. In this exercise, we are disengaging their hindquarters and asking them to step underneath their body. When they take the proper step, they put themselves in a vulnerable position and for a moment are incapable of all those things I just mentioned. Each time they give to our pressure and allow us to put them into a vulnerable position, we are proving to them that we will not hurt them and we will lead them back to a position of security. These repetitions solidify for our horses that we can be trusted and further build on our relationship. At the same time as we're pushing the hindquarters away, our next goal is to hold the forequarters still and move the hindquarters 360 degrees around in a circle. Our last goal, as always, is to minimize the pressure needed to achieve a response. We will use the increasing levels of pressure technique to communicate with our horse what response we're looking for. As soon as we get even the slightest try, we will reward it by releasing our pressure. To get this exercise started, first let's review lead ropes and how to safely handle them. When we gather up our lead rope, we need to be careful not to wrap any loops around our hand. In general, we don't want any part of any equipment that's attached to the horse to be wrapped around us in any way. So we'll pick up our lead line and drape it over our hand. We'll start in our safe 45-degree angle to her shoulder, just like we did in our desensitizing exercise. Then we'll rub our horse with neutral body language. This creates the contrast for when I switch to active body language. I'll lift the lead rope toward her withers. This puts her in a very safe position so that when I add pressure to her hind end, she can't just run out behind me and kick me. If she were to react explosively to my pressure, I have a hold of her nose, which will almost automatically send her hind end away from me if she moves forward. With this safe position, I will begin by applying a little bit of pressure with the tip of my stick toward her hind end. The stick creates distance, which keeps me safe in case she were to kick at it. I start with very light pressure, just tapping the air above her hip. As soon as she yields her hind end and moves it away, I'll release the pressure, go back to neutral body language, and rub her hip. Each time we practice this exercise, I'm looking for two things to happen. The first is to have her near hind foot step in front of her far hind foot. The next thing I want to see happen is to have her near front foot remain stationary. Of course, it's going to turn, but I don't want her to take a step with it. I just want it to stay in the same spot. This isolates her hindquarters and causes them to move without her forequarters moving. Holding my lead rope short enough, high enough, and towards her withers achieves the correct bend in her neck to keep her forequarters stationary, which also serves the purpose of keeping me safe in this exercise. As with all of our exercises, we will practice on both sides of our horse's body, keeping in mind that they will need to be given the time to learn it on both sides. Just because they've seen the exercise on the left side of their body does not necessarily mean that they will understand it on the right side. It is possible that the lesson transfers, but we cannot have that expectation. Now, again, we'll teach a horse that has never seen hindquarter yields. We will first start with safe lead rope management. Then we step out to a safe angle off of her front shoulder. We rub her withers with the stick, lift the lead rope to her withers, and switch to active body language. As always, we use light pressure to begin with and increase if necessary. The light pressure we use at first is to tap the air above her hindquarters. We use a 4 count to help ourselves know when to increase the pressure. If we tap the air 4 times and our horse doesn't move her feet, then we will lightly tap her hind end. If she doesn't move with a very light tap, we will increase the intensity just a little bit until her feet move. We will not be using any kind of excess force, and pain is not a factor here, but we do need to add enough pressure to motivate her to find a solution. Our first goal is to get her hindquarters moving away from us. As soon as that happens, we release the pressure by rubbing her. With all of these exercises, repetition is important, so we will do many iterations of pressure and release. Each time I apply pressure, I use my ask, tell, make process. I start with active body language, which is the ask, then I tap the air, that's the tell, and then I tap her hind end, that's the make. I'm looking for that near hind foot to step over in front of the far hind foot. As soon as that happens, I release and rub. It's very important in this teaching stage not to get greedy with results. First, I'm looking for movement in her hindquarters away from pressure. Then I'm looking for a single step from that near hind foot in front of the far hind foot. Ultimately, I want her to pivot in a full circle without moving her front feet. But to begin with, I'm just looking for a single step. Releasing the pressure the first time she gets the right answer, that first step, is the key to helping her understand what we want. If I continue to apply pressure until I get a full circle at this stage, she would just get confused and frustrated. My job is to make it as clear as possible for her so that she can find the right answer and then use perfect timing in my release to confirm it for her. We want to be very careful to recognize when our horses are trying and never increase pressure while they're in the learning stages. Give them a chance to work it out and give us the response that we're looking for. After many repetitions on her left side, we will switch and practice on her right side following the same procedure. Rub with neutral body language to create the contrast, shift to active, lift the lead rope, and apply pressure to the hindquarters. She gets off to a little bit of a rocky start and does not behave the same as she did when we were on the other side. This is a very normal response. Just because we've taught her a lesson on one side does not mean that it will translate to the other side. On the contrary, we have to assume that it won't translate, so we will start over at the beginning on each side. If we are aware of the fact that horses have a hard time transferring knowledge from one side of their body to the other side, then we are less likely to get frustrated thinking she should know the exercise already. Anytime I forget this concept, I pick up a pen and try to write with my left hand. I am quickly humbled and realize how unrealistic it is to expect perfect results from both sides of the body. We are looking for just one good step in the beginning, and we have to be sure to reward it by releasing the pressure. I can tell this side was a bit harder for her, so here, when she gives me a really great step, I choose this successful moment to take all the pressure off and give her extra rubs to let her know that she's got it right.